Welcome back, boys and girls. Let's keep reading and find out what happens next with Madison. I certainly hope her life's going to get a little bit better, and I am curious about whether or not that one-of-a-kind television does something extraordinary. We'll see. Chapter 4. I could tell this was a kind of holy moment for Florida. She pulled out a can of Orchid Oasis room freshener. Let's welcome the new TV with a divine scent of happiness. Shh. And then she sprayed. I remember smelling a real orchid once. It was the prettiest flower I'd ever seen. I leaned in to take a whiff and expected the scent of something wonderful, but it smelled exactly like nothing. My mom said it was a good reminder that pretty on the outside doesn't always mean pretty on the inside. Florida's Orchid Oasis spray didn't smell a bit like orchids. More like a public restroom that got cleaned up with some sweet perfumey stuff after someone threw up in the toilet. Let's take this TV for a test drive. She patted the spot next to her on the sofa. I sat down and watched her fingers work lightning fast on the remote. In record speed, she figured out how to get 6 shopping channels on the TV at once. My mission is to buy 6 fabulous things from 6 shopping shows in 10 minutes. Here's the stopwatch. Ready? Go! I pushed the silver button on the stopwatch and Florida flew into action. She punched in phone numbers for the shopping shows even faster than she'd worked the remote control. She knew them all by heart. The first thing she bought was from the Home Shopping Channel. It was a blender, powerful enough to grind a G.I. Joe into dust. Why anyone would ever need to do that, I haven't a clue. The next 3 items she purchased: 2 cases of sunflower blonde hair dye, a ham dogger, which made hamburgers in the shape of hot dogs, and a ceramic poodle for her collection. Where would she even put that poodle? Her shelves were already bursting with them. Time check, Florida said. 3.5 minutes to go. 3.5 minutes until I could go back in my room for the rest of the day. Ooh, melt away your wrinkles face cream. She called the beauty channel and ordered about a zillion cases of the stuff. Now we'll have enough for both of us, she said. I don't have wrinkles. I'm 11. It's never too early to start taking care of your complexion, dear. I was pretty sure I was trapped in a nightmare. And the final thing she bought, a giant bag of hair bows. We've got to do something about that hair of yours, honey, she said as she made the phone call. What is it about my hair? The last time my grandmother commented about it was at Violet's house, right before my mom's funeral. Madison, darling, she'd said, you've grown so much. I wouldn't have recognized you, except for that stick-straight mouse brown hair. I hadn't known what to say. Given the situation, I was already sad enough without having to hear that. Besides, I like my hair. It is exactly the same as my mom's. Cool it, Florida, Grandpa Jack had said. After that, Violet and I stayed in her room playing Crazy 8s until we had to leave for the cemetery. Right after my mom died, talking with anyone but Violet made me cry. That's it, Florida said when she hung up the phone. Time. I pushed the button on the stopwatch. 9 minutes and 43 seconds. Oh, I am good. This TV is the best thing that ever happened to me. Wow. Really? Can I go to my room now? I asked. But Florida was fixated on the new TV and didn't answer. I'm not sure she even noticed when I left. I sat on my pink bed and sketched a picture of Florida being hypnotized by her shopping shows, and I wondered why redheaded Mike had wished me good luck. Did it have something to do with that new TV? Chapter 5. Well, dear, I'm off to my job at the flower shop. There's a box of Fruit Loops and peanut butter and jelly in the cupboard if you're hungry. Don't get into too much mischief. I'll be home by 5. Florida slung a sparkly rhinestone purse over her shoulder. I just wandered out of my room where I'd spent most of the day before drawing and wishing I had a different life. I was still in my PJs. Right before she left, Florida kissed the new TV goodbye. Well, actually, she got real close and blew it a kiss since she didn't want to smudge the screen with lipstick. Wow. Here's how many times my grandmother has kissed me. 0. And there she was, kissing a TV. Not that I wanted her to kiss me, not at all, but I still thought it was weird, almost as weird as her obsession with buying so many things from the shopping shows. Why does someone need that much stuff anyway? But I didn't mind spending the day alone. I wasn't in the mood to meet anyone new. Ever since my mom died, everyone I meet always asks me what happened. It's usually the first question after they said, "I'm sorry." I'm thinking having a little card printed up to hand out. "Hi, my name is Madison McGee. I'm 11 years old. My mom died in February from a heart attack. She was only 33. The doctors were as surprised as anyone else because they didn't know she had a problem with her heart. P.S. Thank you for being sorry. P.P.S. I never knew my dad, so please don't bother asking if he's alive. I have no idea." Don't get me wrong. I appreciate people's concern, and I know they're curious. It just makes me too sad to talk about it. So spending the day solo sounded perfect. As soon as Florida left, I helped myself to a bowl of cereal, sat on the sofa, and flipped through the channels on the Megapix. It seemed like an ordinary TV to me, other than the picture-in-a-picture business. I eventually found a rerun of my favorite TV show, Just Jessica. It was a show Violet and I both loved, and we really loved Carly Knight, the girl who played Jessica LePew. I'd already seen the episode. It was a play of Cinderella. Just to be mean, the meanest girl of them all, Ashley, cast Jessica as the evil stepmother's house cat. They all treated Jessica like dirt because she was a famous movie star and they were jealous. Only her best friend, Curtis, stuck up for her. That's how it was in every show. And she always did her best to put up with a bad situation. Violet and I figured that in real life, Carly Knight was probably one of the nicest girls in the world. After Jessica saved the day, which she did at the end of every episode, I turned off the TV. The backup remote control and the contract for the Megapix were still on the coffee table. I remembered what Mike had said about putting them in a safe place, so I stashed them in the bottom of my underwear drawer. Then I grabbed my soccer ball and went into the backyard. Not much grew out there. Only a few fat clumps of prickly cactus. I was extra careful not to get too close to the neighbor's yard because of the dog. At first, I used my soccer ball as a pillow and I lay in the dirt. The backyard may have been drab and dreary, but the sky was beautiful. It was as blue as the feathers on a blue jay's back. Huge, puffy white picture clouds floated through the air. One minute, a cloud was the spitting image of an elephant, and then it morphed into a 3-layer cake with whipped cream frosting. I even spied an angel with lacy white wings. Maybe it was a sign from my mom that she was watching over me. When I finally got up to dribble my soccer ball around the yard, I caught the lady next door staring right at me from her back window. My heart tightened, and I pretended not to notice. Turning on my heels, I kicked the ball to the opposite end of the yard. The next time I peeked, she was gone. Creepy. But if the lady next door was a weirdo, it's possible that the neighbor who lived behind Florida was even weirder. The whole yard was littered with rusty car parts and cast-off computers. "Move, you stupid dog!" A skinny man with greasy hair dragged the ugliest, mangiest dog I'd ever seen to the edge of his property, closest to my grandmother's yard. The dog whined and howled. It was the same howl I'd heard the night before. "Shut up, you idiot mutt!" The man spat in the dirt. He chained the dog to an enormous old cracked computer monitor and then sped off in his rickety van, kicking up dust. At first the dog snorted and growled. Then he got busy scratching his fleas. A few flies buzzed around his head. He lunged and snapped, but they zipped away. Poor dog. I dribbled my soccer ball closer so I could get a better look. The man sure was right about one thing. This dog was definitely a mutt. Maybe a little bit pit bull a little bit bulldog with a sprinkling of something that gave him wiry wisps of stick-up fur. He was short and round with big buggy eyes. Patches of his dirty white coat were missing. His crooked bottom teeth stuck out. The poor guy was badly in need of braces. Soon he got bored with fly catching and went to work gnawing his front paw, drenching it with pools of gooey slobber. I decided to prove to the dog that all humans weren't so mean. I squatted down in front of him. "Hi there, little buddy." I made my voice sound as cheerful as possible. The dog gave a friendly bark. Then he crawled toward me, dragging the heavy computer monitor behind him inch by inch. I set my soccer ball down and let him sniff my hand. "Here, boy. It's okay. I'll be your friend. I won't hurt you." He thumped his tail. He almost seemed to be grinning. As I reached over to pat his head, he lunged at my soccer ball and popped it. He popped my lucky soccer ball. I grabbed for it, thinking maybe I could patch it up, but the dog growled and snatched it back. Rip! That mangy mutt leaped to his feet and flung my flattened ball around like a dead squirrel. "You're a bad, bad dog!" The dog wasn't paying the slightest bit of attention to me. He was too busy digging a hole and burying his new trophy. I fought back tears and ran into the house, slamming the door behind me. I wanted to get as far away from that nasty soccer ball murderer as possible. Yikes. That was special to Madison. Chapter 6. The minutes ticked by like hours. I sat on the sofa with my sketchbook and drew the dog's prison mugshot. Prison is just where he belonged. Then, to cheer myself up, I sketched a picture of Violet and me feeding the Canada geese at Waterfront Park back on Bainbridge Island. When I grow up, I want to be a famous artist. When I draw, my whole world becomes a magical kingdom of dots, lines, curves, and pictures. Then, the rest of the world goes away. Just as I was starting in on a drawing of the beautiful cloud angel, a horrible howl echoed in the backyard. I peered out the sliding glass door. The mangy soccer ball assassin was tangled up in his chain, struggling to yank himself free. But the more he pulled, the harder the chain choked his neck. I crept outside to get a closer look. The second he saw me, his howl changed to a pitiful whimper. Would the crazy lady next door come out and save him? I glanced over there, but her curtains were now pulled shut. It looked like no one was home. Where did she go? Even though that nasty dog had massacred my soccer ball, I couldn't let him die. The chain cinched tighter around his neck and he gasped for breath. It was time to face my fears. Being afraid of the dog wasn't that big a deal, considering he's being choked to death by a chain. "I'll help you, boy." I kneeled beside him. The chain pulled tighter and his whimpers turned to heavy panting. "Calm down, boy. Everything's going to be okay." I moved my hands toward his collar, praying he wouldn't bite. He looked up at me with sad, buggy eyes and panted harder. I slid my fingers under the chain and he yelped with pain. It was way too tight. The only thing to do was to unhook it from the TV monitor and set him free. The second I unclipped him, he bolted like a shot across the yard. And he was out of sight. Great. I'd saved the dog, and then I'd lost him. "Here, boy! Here, boy!" I called for the longest time, but I couldn't even make out the jangling of the chain dragging behind him. I gave up and went back into the house. Should I call 911? Just as I picked up the phone, there was a crash at the back door. The dog was leaping at the glass. I threw open the sliding door and he practically knocked me flat onto the living room floor. He licked me all over as if I were a steak-flavored popsicle. Okay, maybe the soccer ball murderer wasn't entirely bad. It was then that I noticed the tag jingling on his collar. On it was stamped the name Leroy. "You're a bad boy, Leroy," I told him as I scrambled to my feet. "You popped my soccer ball and ran away." The dog hung his head and whimpered. "Okay, I forgive you. This time." He panted with happiness and licked my leg with wet doggy kisses of thanks. "Want me to take off your chain?" Leroy thumped his tail. I led him back outside to the patio, slid the door closed behind us, and unclipped the rusty chain from his collar. Immediately, he charged to the middle of the yard and began to turn in circles so fast he looked like a spinning top. "Come here, Leroy. Come here, boy." Leroy trotted right to me. Wow. He may have been goofy looking, but he sure was smart. "Sit, Leroy. Sit, boy." He stared at me blankly. Okay, maybe he still had things to learn. I pushed down his butt, and he sat. Violet and I had once trained her dog, Oscar, to sit and stay. We'd use little dog biscuits to reward him every time he did something right. The problem was, I didn't have any dog biscuits, but I knew what might work. Fruit Loops. But how could I leave Leroy to go get the box? I clipped on his chain and hooked it to the chaise lounge on the patio. I grabbed the Fruit Loops from the kitchen cupboard, and by the time I returned, Leroy had made himself at home. He was sprawled on his back on the chaise lounge as if he were vacationing in a Hawaiian resort. All he needed was a pair of sunglasses and a bottle of Dog de Soleil sunscreen. It turned out Leroy was a big fan of Fruit Loops. It didn't take him more than 10 minutes to learn how to sit. We moved on to stay pretty quickly. That one wasn't so easy. All he wanted to do was follow me wherever I went. I'd walk 2 steps, and Leroy would walk 2 steps right behind me. I'd walk real fast across the yard, and he'd follow like a shadow at my heels, scooting along the dirt on his butt. "Leroy," I'd say, making my voice sound stern. He'd stare guiltily down at the ground, then each time he'd look up and give me a big grin. Seriously, that dog could smile. Because it was getting super hot outside, I finally gave up trying to teach him to stay. Since Florida wasn't home, I thought it wouldn't be so bad if he came into the house with me just for a little bit. Besides, he was the only friend I had, and at least he couldn't ask me any questions about why I had to move in with my grandmother. The second I slid open the door, Leroy barreled inside. He raced through the house, skidding on the throw rug in the hall, then zipped back to the living room. I pleaded for him to stop, but he kept on going. He sailed onto the sofa, knocking every cushion to the floor. Then he scampered into the kitchen, where he immediately scattered the trash. In 10 seconds flat, he licked up all the leftover scraps from Florida's TV dinner tray. The more I yelled, "Stop!" the faster he zoomed from room to room, knocking over lamps, chairs, and boxes of TV shopping stuff stacked in the hallway. Then in one giant leap, he practically flew onto the dining room table as if he were auditioning for the role of Superdog. He skidded right into Florida's fake flower centerpiece. Just as he was about to snatch it in his jaws, it came to me. I yelled one of the only commands he knew. "Sit, Leroy! Sit!" Leroy sat right in the middle of the dining room table. He eyed the box of Fruit Loops, waiting for his reward. Then he smiled. Seriously, smiled. I sighed and gave him a few bites of cereal. How could I resist that grin? The house was a disaster. I had to clean up before Florida came home. Leroy followed me as I tidied, mostly because I dropped a trail of cereal wherever I went. He happily sucked the pieces up like a vacuum cleaner. As I was putting the last cushions back on the sofa, the TV switched on. The remote control was clenched in Leroy's teeth. "Come here, boy. Drop it. Drop it." Leroy wagged his tail. Drool oozed from his mouth and slid down the plastic. On the TV, someone was selling underwear so tight it made ladies' butts look 2 sizes smaller. I approached him super slowly. He flung the remote back and forth, just as he'd done with my soccer ball. I offered Leroy a Fruit Loop. He dropped the remote control like a hot rock and inhaled the cereal. The remote was totally drenched with doggy drool. I sopped up the slobber with a paper towel. It was tricky cleaning around the buttons. As I dried them off, they'd get pushed in and the TV channels changed like mad. One second, someone was selling tight butt underwear. The next second, it was some cheesy soap opera and then a game show. The channel switched as fast as I wiped the buttons. As I cleaned around a small purple one, the sound on the megapix went dead. A loud ping sounded, kind of like the noise an elevator makes before the doors slide open. A purple question mark appeared in the middle of the screen. Underneath it were some words. Are you sure you want to choose this channel? If yes, push enter again. I've never seen anything like that on a TV before. What do you think, boy? Should I push it? Leroy wasn't paying the slightest bit of attention. He was busy sniffing Florida's ceramic poodle collection. Was this one of the features Mike, the delivery guy, had tried to warn us about? The enter button was still wet with drool, so I dried it off. I heard another ping. Suddenly, my body turned as cold as stone. Everything went blurry, and a strange tingle shot through me. Seconds later, I realized I wasn't in Florida's living room anymore. What? Let's see what happens next. Chapter 7. Name? A woman wearing a headset and holding a clipboard stared at me through sparkling winged glasses. You mean me? What had just happened? Giant video cameras and a zillion bright lights hung from the ceiling. Dozens of people scurried everywhere like an army of ants. People chattered and barked orders, but I don't think any of it sounded louder than the pounding of my own heart. Where in the world was I? Yes, you. What's your name? I was tongue-tied. Then I spotted the sign hanging over a fake living room. In bright green neon, it said, "Shop till you drop." I'd zapped myself right into the TV and into Florida's favorite shopping show. Mike wasn't kidding when he said the Megapix 6000 puts you in the action like no other TV. Come on, speak up. We're ready to go on the air. I'm Madison McGee. The lady smacked her palm to her forehead. Of course you are. Madison, we've been waiting for you. Then she spoke into her headset. Margot, makeup on Madison McGee. What was happening? A woman with spiky purple hair zipped over and patted powder on my face. I was covered in a cloud of makeup dust that made my nose tickle. Don't squirm, kid. Those cheeks still need a touch of blush. She brushed on some pink. Was I going to be on television? The clipboard lady looked me over. Can we do something about the hair? Geez, what was the big deal about my hair? Not in the next 2 minutes. 2 minutes? I had to get out of there. Before I could think up a plan, some guy shoved a blue flowery dress over my head right on top of my t-shirt and shorts. At least I still had the remote control. Could I push the same buttons to zap back to Florida's living room? The clipboard lady broke into a broad grin. Finally, the folks in the front office got a clue. I've been badgering them for months to give us a kid to be our assistant product demonstrator. The audience is going to eat this up. Assistant product demonstrator on a shopping show? I wanted to tell her that there'd been a terrible mistake, but my mouth had frozen shut. She kneeled down, talking a mile a minute. Okay, Madison, here's the deal. You'll meet the product representative for the Dirt Demon Deluxe over at the Dirty Carpet set. Her name is Libby. Our prop guy, Joe, will be off camera. He'll signal for you to pick up one of the buckets filled with stuff that you'll throw on the carpet. Libby will vacuum it up. While she does, all you have to do is stand on the sidelines looking cute until Joe cues you to throw the next bucket. Got it? I could only nod my head. A zillion thoughts bounced through my brain like pinballs. Were they really going to put me on a shopping show? What if Florida came home and saw me on TV? How would I figure out which button to push on the remote control to get back to Truth or Consequences? Could I even go back? And how in the heck was this even possible? The whole thing was super freaky. I positioned my thumb on top of the enter button, but I wasn't fast enough. "I'll take that," said the clipboard lady as she snatched it from my hand. "Can't have you holding a remote control when you're on national television. How in the world did you get this from our product room anyway?" She handed it to a guy with a bright green lizard tattoo on his arm. Now what was I going to do? It turned out I didn't have a second to think about it. Somebody pushed me over to the set with the carpet. Libby was already there, dressed up like she was going out for dinner. Who vacuums their floor wearing high heels and a tight black skirt? "Are you nervous?" she asked me. I nodded, and I was even more nervous about figuring out how to get out of there. "I'm nervous too," Libby told me. "I've never been on television before." I nodded, and I'd never been in a television before. Suddenly, the clipboard lady looked frantic. "Where is he? Somebody, please get him here now. We're on in 20 seconds. "He's on his way," someone yelled back. I was curious who he was. Then in a burst of speed, a guy pushed a wheelchair into the studio. Sitting in it was the TV host that Florida loved and adored, Alan Stone. He leaped from the wheelchair and plunked himself down on the sofa in the living room set. Marco dusted his face with powder and fluffed his hair. "We're on in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, said the clipboard lady. And then I was on live TV. What? Well, it seems like our friend Madison has a new friend herself, even if he is a stinky old mutt from next door. I'm certainly glad that she has someone to keep her company. Let's hear about some of these new developments in the story from our author, Leroy B. Arnold.
Oh my gosh, pretty crazy, right? Okay, I have a question for you guys. If someone knocked on your door and delivered a Megapix 6000, what TV show would you go into? I thought about that a lot, and I think I would go into a travel show, and I'd go to Paris for breakfast, and then maybe I'd go to someplace in Italy for dinner, or to New Zealand and go hiking, and then I could go, sleep in my bed at night, just kind of teleport back. I have 2 sons, and I bet anything that they would want to teleport into a football game so they could sit in the stands and watch it from there and get the really nice seats. So remember when I said I do a lot of research before I write my story? Okay, I have a confession to make. Before I wrote this, I had never ever watched a shopping show in my life. So I got my pad of paper and my pencil, and I sat down and I watched shopping shows for 3 hours straight. I wanted to know how the hosts talked. I wanted to know what kind of things they sold. And then I did a lot of research. So remember when Alan Stone gets pushed in a wheelchair? I read about that. That is actually what happens on shopping shows, because some of these studios are so far apart, and they have to get the host from one area to the next, and they have to do it quickly, and that way they can get there without, messing up their hair and their makeup or something before they go on camera again. Okay, now I actually want to talk about one of my favorite 4-legged characters, Leroy. So did you notice how Madison's perception of him changed? First she thought he was, vicious, and now she realizes that even if he's a little rambunctious, maybe a little naughty, he's also pretty sweet. And as Miss Josephine reads more of this story to you, notice how Madison's view of so many people will change between now and the end of the book. Okay, so let's get back to the story. And while I don't want to give too much away, something is going to happen that puts Madison on the spot, and she has to take over for Libby, the vacuum cleaner lady. And that thing turns out to be something that really happens on shopping shows. And how do I know that? Research.